Welcome, fellow Kerbonauts, to my playthrough of Kerbal Space Program, titled Kerbal Space Program Fully Loaded. This playthrough is committed to using a ton of mods, 56 at the moment to be precise. We're going to play on the difficulty setting of moderate, which means that we are getting less resources and less funds, and that we are going to have to spend extra cash to unlock parts. I'm usually playing Kerbal Space Program on my German-speaking channel, where I have played a series called Operation Vanilla, which of course is concerned with playing the game in vanilla without any mods. So this is going to be a stark departure from this. A new day dawns upon the KSC, and so we are heading over to the mission control building to pick up the first contracts. Of course, this is basically what you would expect from a fresh start, which means we are going to pick up the world first contracts of launching a new vessel and actually getting a craft into orbit. You can already see that there are some changes here done by mods, of course, and we're going to talk about them as soon as they become important. So the first craft we built, we already see which mods are going to play a huge role in this, and you can see we're using procedural parts and tweak scale for the parts in the vehicle assembly building, which means we can actually create tanks to our liking, giving them the size and content that we would like, and also we can retexture them, which is always nice. And you can see here that we're using Real Shoot, a very nice mod for nicer parachutes that also integrates well with tweak scale. And this is sort of what I was trying to do with this mod series, is actually pick mods that work well together, and this is what we have here. We are going to do some basic science on the pad, of course, which is the typical first steps. And so this episode I'm going to talk more about what mods I chose and why I chose them, and not so much describing what you see on the screen, because this is basically what you already know. It's how the series progresses that will determine how different it's going to be from your typical playthrough. But these first missions are, of course, a bit, standard. We've now unlocked a ton of science here, and a ton of reputation also was gained, and some experience for Jebediah, and now we're going to spend it all. Of course, we are unlocking Engineering 101, including the decouplers and the materials bay, and of course we're going to unlock basic rocketry. And since this is on the difficulty setting of moderate, you have to unlock the parts with cash as well to actually use them in your rocket construction. And here you can see the full tech tree, which is of course powered by community tech tree. I've chosen the mods to actually align with the tech tree and to provide a very nice career experience. Everything is on this tech tree in a specific place that makes sense, both in terms of the place in the science tree and of course in a gameplay sense. So we are now unlocking some more fuel tanks, the procedural liquid fuel tank, and of course the magnificent swivel engine, and some more solid rocket boosters so that we have them on hand if we need them. But this rocket is going to be a liquid fueled rocket only, and for this first rocket that's going to leave the launch pad, we are actually trying to get the most out of it. So we are choosing the procedural tanks, which you can of course also change visually to different textures, which we will not dabble with too much on screen or on video. This rocket of course has to adhere to the limitations of the vehicle assembly building and the launch pad for starter rockets. So when you first start a career playthrough, you are limited to 30 parts and 18 tons on the launch pad until you upgrade the launch pad and the vehicle assembly building. So you upgrade the launch pad to support heavier rockets, and you upgrade the vehicle assembly building to allow for rockets with more parts. And both of them actually are pretty important, but here we manage quite well with about 20 parts. And as we are ascending into the heavens, you can see that this is not your typical Kerbal Space Center, and as we go further up and enjoy the nice visual enhancements that we have provided by stock visual enhancements, by Scatterer, by Real Plume, and of course on the audio level by mods like Chatterer and other mods like PlanetShine, we can see that this is not Kerbin. In fact, this is a stock-sized version of our real solar system called Stock-Sized Real Solar System, which is quite convenient, and it's really, really beautiful. And I'm really looking forward to exploring the real solar system, which is, as you will see through the series, a lot more complicated than your typical Kerbal system. Yes, this rocket overperformed. It was actually doing better than I expected, which meant that we are going to space already and achieving the milestone of leaving the atmosphere and completing our world-first contracts. Now we are collecting, of course, science from space, which is great. And then we are going to come back, and as you can see, we are reaching an apogee of 170 kilometers and then going down over northern Africa. But there's a small problem. As I did not expect this rocket to actually reach space, I did not plan for re-entry. So this rocket has, of course, no heat shield under the materials bay, which would have also been impossible to install since we did not unlock heat shields yet. So we are going for a rough re-entry, at least that was what I thought. And you can see it here. You can see Gibraltar just to the north of the rocket, and you can see our ascent stage now speeding up as we are slowing down and actually passing under us and now fading out of view over there. And we are going to land in the northern African Sahara. And you can see the temperature rising, the plasma flowing by our spacecraft, but we still manage not to explode, and I was quite surprised by this, but I'm, taking what I can get, and so we are going to land in the northern Sahara and collect some more science. And now the chutes deploy. As you can see, this is also not your typical chute. This is actually the 3 parts Apollo style chute that is provided by the mod Real Chutes, which I highly recommend. Of course, these first missions are pretty much what you would expect from a typical playthrough, so I'm not going to be too specific about what is happening on the screen right now. Rather, I'd like to talk a bit more about the mods that we chose and what's going to come in future episodes. As you have seen, the tech tree was quite large. We are going to try to visit everybody in the solar system, and we are going to try to set up base on some of them and maybe even colonize them. So we have included a lot of mods that are stock alike and that are going for a stock alike feeling. So even though this is a modded playthrough, I still wanted it to be consistent with the look and feel of the base game. And as you can see, we collected a ton of science rather unexpectedly, and we also unlocked new strategies. You can see it here. Strategies here are coming from a mod that totally revamps the administration building to include this ton of strategies that you can now unlock. And it's a great mod. It's called Strategia. And what's really nice about it is that you have to set yourself a goal and then stick to it. And it kind of gives you a strong focus on specific targets, like sending a man on the moon or getting a probe to a different body of the solar system. But you still have to adapt rather fluidly to the situation to make the most of those strategies, and these strategies are really your way to success in this playthrough, and the contracts also reflect that, and that's really, really nice. So of course we are now unlocking a lot of science nodes with the science that we brought from our unexpectedly successful mission, which means that we can unlock advanced rocketry, the survivability node, and the one in the middle. Of course, in the survivability node, we are unlocking heat shields, which would have been nice on the previous mission as well. And now we are unlocking procedural tanks, or rather another tank and one more SRB. So on to new horizons, so to speak. So we are going to accept some parts testing and the Orbit Earth contract as well as our next goal. And of course, those part testings are not getting you that much revenue, but they're nice to fill up the coffers early on in the game. Here we are tasked with testing the radial decoupler on the launch site, which is pretty easy to do. And of course, since we want to reuse this rocket design, I'm adding the heat shield in here so that I don't forget it later. And here I'm debating whether or not to actually use testing this decoupler as part of our next real flight mission, but then decide against it so that I can fulfill the mission, get a new contract, and then do the actual mission. The test, of course, is done by activating the part through the staging diagram, not by decoupling it through a button, which I always thought was kind of peculiar. So you have to unlock it with the staging. There it is. And I could have set down the force for this decoupler, but it wouldn't be Kerbal Space Program without some pretty nice explosions. So I actually did this mission twice because it was offered twice, but I cut out the second decoupler testing. Not sure why they wanted a rerun of this, but now we have enough reputation to unlock to boldly go 1. This is a strategy it's really nice. You pay a lot of cash to buy into it, but then it provides you with 15,000 cash for every science you return from a new biome. And now we are accepting the Orbit Earth contract, which brings us up to 2 because we also accepted a contract about testing a radial parachute returning from our next flight from orbit. So now we are reworking our rocket to include 2 rather heavy solid rocket boosters, and here you can see that I messed up the staging, and this also wouldn't be Kerbal Space Program without some strange staging. So I activate the liquid fuel engine in flight, even though it should have been started right at launch. Now our majestic Hopper 4, which is the name of this rocket, launches into the heavens, and we are on a trajectory that is a bit steeper than I would like. I would have liked to turn the rocket sooner and more rigorously, but I was concerned because, as you can see, the liquid fuel engine needs to be dialed down quite a lot, and so we have little control authority over this craft until we throttle up the liquid fuel engine, because of course the solid rocket boosters cannot or are not gimbaling. Only the liquid fuel rocket can do that, and that's what we've done here. We're now 20 kilometers up, and everything looks quite well for our ascent into orbit. This was planned as a possible orbit flight, and at least a very good suborbital flight for some more science. And as you can see, we are now reaching 70 kilometers and have an apoapse, or an apogee rather, of about 80 kilometers, at which point we are going to try to circularize this and achieve a full orbit. And as you can see, there is not that many liquid fuel left in our engine, but we try nonetheless, and who would have thunk it, we are actually able to achieve a stable orbit of 80 kilometers versus, what's that on the perigee, 71. And so this is the world first Jebediah Kerman, the first Kerbal to circle around the Earth. And this is a good time to acknowledge how beautiful the stock visual enhancement and scatter actually are, and turning the game into something rather beautiful. Here we see this magnificent sunset as our craft passes on its first full orbit onto the dark side of the planet, looking down at the lights from the cities below, and then of course re-emerging into the light with this beautiful sunrise here. And now it's already time to think about returning to Kerbin, or the Earth rather. And this playthrough has some life support system installed, which is tech life support, and we are going to make good use of it. Of course, we could have circled the Earth some more here, but we were just perfectly aligned with our starting point, and so my idea was to actually come down close to the KSC here, maybe around Cuba. But of course, I do not know yet how to best set up my return trajectories. And of course, the mod real trajectories, which would help me with this, is installed, but it's locked behind another science node. So we are going to need some more time before we unlock this and have the full benefit. So here I was kind of eyeballing it, and now returning, you can see now the North America coming into view. There's the Baja de California coming up right here, passing over the continental US, and then pretty much coming down smack in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. And our re-entry angle is kinda shallow, so we are not getting a lot of re-entry heating, no plasma to be seen, so basically we could have left the ablative shield, the heat shield, at home. I'm not quite sure this is how it is supposed to be. We might need to install deadly re-entry, and I'm looking into this for the next episodes, but for the moment I'm just happy that we completed this mission without any problems. So now we are almost ready to splash down in the Gulf of Mexico, quite close to a small island that I have no knowledge of, and I'll have to look it up, but that's certainly interesting to see the world from this perspective and to get to know new places. Yes, you can see here we are almost off the coast of Mexico and no wall to be seen. Gladly. Yeah, splashing down, of course we are going to collect some more science, since the oceans of Earth are of course an own biome, and this means we are going to collect 15,000 funds for new science from a new biome. Since we are yet to upgrade any buildings at the KSC, we have no ability to do EVAs in space or collect surface samples, so I'm not, moving Jebediah to the ocean. We are going to revisit the ocean lots of times, so no need for this at this point. And of course we are getting tons of science and tons of reputation, and Jebediah gains a new level, so he's now a more proficient pilot. And we are of course able to collect 15,000 credits for getting science from different biome, and we are able to activate a ton of new strategies. But this has to wait for the next episodes. Thank you for watching and see you next time.